My name is Rachel Cole. I am 34 years old, and on a completely ordinary Tuesday morning, while I was packing school lunches and arguing with my 7-year-old about wearing a jacket, my husband Daniel mailed a paternity test without telling me. He did it quietly, efficiently, the way men do things when they have already decided the story they want to believe and just need the paperwork to confirm it. He swabbed our son's toothbrush, sealed it in a prepaid envelope he had been hiding in his gym bag, and dropped it in the mailbox on his way to work like it was a bill payment. I know this because I found the receipt 3 days later in the pocket of his gray jacket while I was doing laundry. For a full 30 seconds, I stood in the laundry room holding that piece of paper and felt the floor shift under me. Not because I was guilty. I have never been unfaithful to Daniel. Not once. Not for a single moment in 9 years of marriage. But because I understood in that instant what it meant that he had done this without a word, without a question, without a conversation. He had looked at our son, our 7-year-old son, who has Daniel's exact jawline and Daniel's terrible habit of sleeping with one arm thrown over his face, and decided the question was worth asking behind my back. I put the receipt back in the pocket. I finished the laundry. I made dinner that night and sat across from Daniel at the table and talked about the weather and the neighbors and whether we should repaint the living room. And I started making phone calls. The first call was to my sister Bridget, who is 4 years older than me and has never once in her life told me what I wanted to hear when what I needed was the truth. "Tell me exactly what you found," she said. I told her. There was a pause. How long ago did he mail it? 3 days. So results could come back any time in the next week or two. Yes. Another pause. What do you want to do? That was the question. Not how could he or what a monster or any of the comforting outrage I might have gotten from someone who loved me less honestly. Just what do you want to do? I sat with it for a moment. I want to know everything before he does, I said. Bridget was quiet for exactly 2 seconds. Then you need to call the lab. The second call was harder. It took me most of the next day to find the right company. The return address on the receipt was a processing facility in another state. I called their customer service line and explained, carefully and without emotion, that I was the mother of the child whose sample had been submitted, that I had not consented to the test, and that I wanted to understand my legal options regarding the results. The representative put me on hold for 4 minutes. When she came back, her voice had shifted into a more careful register. She said that in most states, collecting a DNA sample from a minor child without the consent of both custodial parents existed in a complicated legal gray area. She said she could not stop the results from being processed, but she confirmed, after I provided the case number from the receipt, that the results had not yet been delivered. She also confirmed who had ordered the test, who had paid for it, and whose name and email address were listed for result delivery. I wrote everything down. Then I called a family attorney named Patricia Hale, whose number I had gotten from a colleague at work 3 years earlier during a situation that never ended up requiring legal help. I had kept it saved in my phone under a fake name ever since, the way women sometimes do, quietly, carefully, just in case. Patricia answered on the second ring. I told her what I had found, what I had confirmed, what I suspected was coming. She asked me one question before anything else. Do you want to save the marriage or protect yourself? I looked out my kitchen window at the backyard where my son was kicking a soccer ball against the fence, alone, narrating his own imaginary game at full volume the way he always did. I don't know yet, I said honestly, but I want to be ready for both. Smart, she said. Here's what we're going to do. I want to be honest about what those next several days felt like, because this is the part people usually skip over in favor of the dramatic moments, and I think it matters. They felt like nothing. Not numbness, exactly. More like a very specific kind of calm that descends when you have made a decision, and the only thing left is execution. I went to work. I picked up my son from school. I cooked and cleaned and had normal conversations and laughed at things and fell asleep in the same bed as a man who had mailed a secret paternity test and was now waiting for results that would tell him whether his own child was his. I thought about confronting him immediately, laying the receipt on the dinner table and watching his face. I didn't. Not yet. Because Patricia had explained something to me that I hadn't considered. In our state, initiating certain legal protections required documentation of financial standing, joint assets, and account access that could be complicated if the other party had advance warning and time to move things. She wasn't suggesting Daniel would do that, but she was suggesting I shouldn't assume he wouldn't. So I spent those quiet, calm, ordinary days doing the following things. I made copies of every joint financial document I could access. Bank statements, mortgage papers, retirement accounts. The business account for the small landscaping company Daniel had been running for 6 years that I had co-signed the original loan for and had never once been given login access to. I opened a personal checking account at a different bank, moved my direct deposit there. I photographed every piece of paper in the filing cabinet in Daniel's home office, not to use as weapons, just to have them. And I called Patricia every evening after my son was asleep to walk through scenarios I hoped I would never need. On the 4th day, Daniel came home from work quieter than usual. He ate dinner without saying much, helped with the dishes, put our son to bed, which he didn't always do on weeknights. I watched him move through the house and tried to understand what was happening inside him. Whether he was ashamed, whether he was afraid, whether some part of him already regretted the envelope he had dropped in that mailbox. I couldn't tell. After 9 years of marriage, I could not read my own husband's face. That frightened me more than the test itself. The results arrived on a Friday. I know this because Patricia had arranged, through a process I will not detail because it is honestly quite boring and involves a lot of hold music, for me to be notified the moment the results were delivered to the email address on the account. I was in a meeting at work when my phone buzzed with a message from her. 3 words. They came through. I excused myself, walked to the bathroom, stood at the sink with the water running and breathed for about 60 seconds. Then I texted back. Does he know yet? Her response was almost immediate. Delivered to his email 4 minutes ago. I looked at myself in the mirror for a moment. Then I dried my hands, went back to the meeting, and finished the last 20 minutes without my voice shaking once. I drove home at my normal time. I picked up my son from after-school care. We stopped for ice cream because it was Friday and Friday was our tradition. He told me about a game he had invented at recess involving a stick, 2 rocks, and a complicated set of rules that changed every time someone was losing. I listened to every word. I laughed in all the right places. When we pulled into the driveway, Daniel's car was already there. Earlier than usual. My son ran inside. I sat in the car for exactly 1 minute with my hands in my lap. Then I picked up my phone and called Patricia. He's home, I said. Are you ready? She asked. Yes. Remember, you don't have to do anything tonight that can't be undone. You can simply observe. You can wait. You have time. I know, I said, but I'm done waiting. Daniel was sitting at the kitchen table when I walked in, not doing anything. Not on his phone, not with a drink, not pretending to read something. Just sitting there with his hands flat on the table like a man who had been rehearsing a conversation and couldn't remember how to start it. My son had already disappeared upstairs with a snack and the particular focused energy of a child who has just remembered a show he forgot to finish. Daniel looked at me when I came in. His face was doing something complicated and not entirely successful. Hey, he said. Hey, I said back. I put my bag down. Poured myself a glass of water, stood at the counter and looked at him. How was your day? I asked. He opened his mouth, closed it. Something moved across his expression like a shadow. Ratch, he said. I need to tell you something. I set my glass down and gave him my full attention. Okay. He looked at the table, then at me, then at the table again. I did something, he said, a few weeks ago, and I know it was wrong. I knew it was wrong when I did it, and I did it anyway, and I've been carrying it, and I need to tell you. I said nothing. I ordered a paternity test, he said, for Marcus. The name of our son in that sentence. I felt something tighten in my chest that had nothing to do with surprise. I mailed it from the lab kit, he continued. I used his toothbrush. I know I should have talked to you. I know. But I had this thought, and it just kept getting louder, and I didn't know how to ask without. Without what? I said quietly. He stopped. Without what, Daniel? He looked up at me. His eyes were red at the edges. Without it becoming something it didn't need to become if the answer was what I hoped it was. Something in the room shifted. Not softened. Just shifted. And what was the answer? I asked. He swallowed. He's mine. Obviously. The results came back today, and he's 100% mine, and I feel like the worst person alive because I already knew that. I knew it before I mailed the thing. I think I just needed the paper to. To what? I said. Still quiet. Still even. To prove that I'm not a liar? That I'm not who you apparently decided I might be? He flinched. Because that's what you were asking, Daniel. That's the actual question inside that envelope. Not whether Marcus is your son. Whether I'm the person you married or someone you invented. I know, he said. His voice had gone very small. I know. Do you? I said. Because I want to make sure we're having the right conversation. Not the one where you apologize and I reassure you and we move on. The actual conversation about what it means that you looked at our son and at 9 years of marriage and decided a secret lab test was more reliable than asking me directly. He was quiet for a long time. Where is this coming from? I asked. Not angry. Genuinely asking. What happened that made this feel like something you needed to do? And then he said something that I had not expected. He told me. It took about 20 minutes, and it was not a simple story. It involved something his brother had said at a family gathering 8 months earlier. A careless, throwaway comment about how Marcus didn't look like anyone in the family, delivered as a joke, absorbed by Daniel as a splinter. It involved a period at work 6 months ago when he had been struggling with something he had never told me about, a conversation with a colleague that had sent him down a spiral of insecurity that he had not known how to voice. It involved, at the bottom of all of it, a fear so old and private that it had nothing to do with me at all. I listened to all of it. When he was finished, I sat down at the table across from him. I found the receipt 11 days ago, I said. His face went completely still. In your jacket pocket. When I was doing laundry. He didn't speak. I've known since then, I said. I've been waiting for you to tell me yourself. Ratch, I made some phone calls. I continued. To a lawyer. To the lab. I have documentation of everything. Not because I wanted to hurt you. Because I didn't know yet whether I needed to protect myself, and I wasn't going to wait to find out. He looked like a man watching the floor he thought was solid turn to water underneath him. I haven't filed anything, I said. I haven't made any decisions. I'm not sitting here telling you it's over. I paused. But I am sitting here telling you that this conversation, the real one, not the version where you apologize and I absorb it, this conversation is not optional. We're going to have it. All of it. For as long as it takes. Daniel's jaw was tight. His eyes were wet. Okay, he said. Very quietly. Okay. I am not going to tell you that what followed was easy. It wasn't. The weeks after that Friday were the hardest of our marriage. Harder than the early years when we had no money and were learning how to fight without breaking things permanently. Harder than the year we lost to pregnancy and didn't know how to grieve in the same direction. We started seeing a therapist, not because either of us issued an ultimatum. Because after that kitchen table conversation, we both understood that there were things living underneath our marriage that had never been properly examined, and that a secret paternity test was only the most recent and most visible symptom of something that had been growing quietly for a long time. Daniel talked about the brother's comment, about the work spiral, about a fear of being deceived that he had been carrying since long before he met me, rooted in something from his childhood that I had known the outline of, but never the depth. I talked about what it had felt like to discover the receipt, the specific quality of that particular betrayal, not infidelity, not cruelty, but a quiet decision made without me that said, at its core, I do not fully trust you. There were sessions where I was so angry I could barely sit in the chair. There were sessions where he cried in a way I had never seen him cry before, and I didn't know what to do with it. There were also, somewhere in the middle of all of it, moments of something that felt like genuine honesty. The kind that only becomes available after pretense stops being an option. I'm not here to tell you we fixed everything. I'm not here to give you a tidy conclusion. What I can tell you is that the person I was in that laundry room on the morning I found the receipt, the woman who put it back in the pocket and went quietly to work, that woman made a decision. Not to blow everything up out of pain, not to absorb it in silence out of fear, but to be completely, deliberately prepared before any conversation happened. To know more than he expected me to know. To walk into that kitchen on a Friday evening with a full picture, while he had only a piece of one. And when I sat down across from him, I wasn't doing it from a position of ambush or revenge. I was doing it from a position of someone who had finally, for the first time in a very long time, taken herself seriously enough to prepare for the possibility that the person she loved might need to be faced rather than managed. That's not a small thing. For years I had been the person in our marriage who smoothed things over, who absorbed discomfort so it wouldn't become conflict, who noticed things and chose silence because the alternative felt dangerous. What those 11 days taught me, the laundry room, the lawyer calls, the quiet dinners, the waiting, is that there is a version of love that does not require you to be unprepared. That trusting someone does not mean making yourself vulnerable to being blindsided. That you can love a person fully and still keep your own paperwork in order. Daniel is still my husband. Marcus still doesn't know any of this happened. The folder Patricia helped me build is still in my desk drawer at work, in a sealed envelope with her contact information paper-clipped to the front. I hope I never open it. But I will never again be the woman who puts the receipt back in the pocket and hopes it works out. So let me ask you this before we close. If you found something in your partner's jacket, something that told you they had been doubting you quietly, testing you privately, building a case without your knowledge, what would you do in the days before they knew you knew? Would you confront immediately? Would you prepare in silence the way I did? Or would you put it back in the pocket and hope it disappeared on its own? Tell me in the comments. Because I think more people have stood in that laundry room than would ever admit it out loud.